learning outcome I'm doing is discussing the dual task techniques that researchers use to assess the attention demands of performing a motor skill. So one technique is called the continuous secondary task technique. And the purpose of this technique is to see if attention capacity is needed throughout the performance of a motor skill. In this technique, a person executes primary and secondary tasks separately and at the same time. And when done at the same time, the person will be instructed to focus on executing the primary activity while still executing the secondary activity. So an example would be a person walking down a hallway, listening to words spoken on headphones, and that would be the primary task. And the secondary task would be when they hear a word spoken, the person has to repeat the word that was spoken to them prior. And the reasoning behind this technique is that if the primary task demands full attention capacity, which would be walking down that hallway, the performance will be worse on the secondary task when it is done with that primary task than when only performing the secondary task. So the person will, when walking, will have trouble repeating the word prior when than if they weren't walking and only focusing on that secondary task. So another technique would be called the secondary task probe technique. And the purpose is to see the attention demands needed by the preparation of a skill, performance of specific components of a skill, or specific times during the performance of a skill. And in this procedure, an individual executes primary and secondary tasks separately and at the same time. The secondary activity is executed at fixed times prior or during the execution of the primary activity. So in other words, the secondary task probes the primary activity. An example of this would be a person reaching and grabbing for a cup and drinking it and listening to headphones of a beeping noise. And that beeping can occur before or during that action of reaching to get a drink. And when they hear that beeping noise, they have to say a word like bop into a microphone. And that would be the secondary task. And the reasoning behind this is that if a probe site of primary task demands full attention capacity, performance will be poor on the secondary task while performing it with the primary task than when only the secondary task. So the person trying to grab the drink and having to say the word bop after the beep will be worse when they're doing that primary than when they only have to listen and say bop.